Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Vitali, and welcome to Psychic Podcast. This is another exciting episode where I get to bring in my good friend, without a doubt, the greatest female martial arts film star we have in America. She's appeared in over 70 films, and one of my great friends. Say hi to Cynthia Rothrock.
So I
So happy to have you back on the show again. And earlier we had you on the show. We talked about your movie project, and we're so excited about that. And what I wanted to do was find out because I'm fascinated by your whole career because you and I have a similar background, with the martial arts and then doing Hong Kong films and et cetera, like that. So, can we first start though? You are an adventurer. I follow you on Facebook. You go all over the world. What's that about?
yeah, I think, I have a lot of energy and I like to challenge myself. So, I found that doing extreme adventure, does both of that. I think I'm an adrenaline junkie. So I started at first trekking like to Everest Base Camp, to Machu Picchu, to the Patagonia trek, and I was into that. And then I started doing white water rafting and recently, when COVID started, I was going crazy. Like, what can I do? What can I do? And I was like, all right, I'm going to start scuba diving. So now I scuba dive all over the world. I love that. It's a passion of mine. And it's just something I love doing. I love going to different countries. I love meeting different people, seeing the cultures, and finding no matter where I go, even if it's in the States, I'll be like, okay, what's the most unusual thing I could do? What's off the beaten path here that I could do? And I like to go for that unusual stuff. That's just like how my mind, I guess, is that I seek those kind of adventures, and I like to take people along with me to do them. But yeah, I think once I stopped competition, I went into movies, and then I stopped in '99 for a while because I had my daughter. And then when I came back, that's when this whole extreme adventure, I think I needed to channel my energies into something. And I found that that's a passion, whether it's like, bungee jumping in New Zealand or, white water rafting, the highest rapids. I get nervous about it, but for some weird reason, I like that. I feel once I do it, it was such an accomplishment, and just memories that I always like cherish.
Well, I'll never forget. My wife Kathy and I we went with you to Berlin for one of these film festivals, and we had so many stars with us. Don Wilson and Keith Strandberg was there, Lauren Avedon, and you know Richard Norton. We had a whole group of us, and we spent the whole week. And I'll never forget you telling me about one of your mountain climbing adventures where I went. The lady's crazy. She's trying to go up these mountains and almost dying, and people do die going up those. Now, I guess that's what you were. You were an adrenaline junkie in one way. You just love adventure.
I do, but I'm very careful. I know when I do something that's risky that I try to be as safe as I can. I won't do something that I think, oh yeah, I'm gonna die doing this. But I
Well,
do I do chill things, put it that way, that make
no,
my heart go like this before I do it.
I follow you. You can't fool me. Everything you do, it was almost a death defying kind of a thing. You swim with sharks. You couldn't pay me enough to get in the water with sharks. You climb up mountains I wouldn't get anywhere close to. I have a good friend of mine. He's a black belt. He's in our South Carolina Karate Hall of Fame. His name is Tom Mulligan, and he's very famous in South Carolina. He's actually the attorney for the current governor. He's one of the most politically powerful person in South Carolina. He heads up the Water Commission, but he is you in a male's costume. He goes all over the world. He's climbed every major mountain, everyone, and then he's taken film crews. He's swimming every major ocean. He even teaches, get this, the French Foreign Legion how to swim with great whites. So he does all the things that you do, and he goes all over the world in the Explorer Club and the whole bit. And he's got the best personality. He just loves an adventure. And I've always thought my whole time, every time he's talking to me, I'm going, boy, you should teamed up with Cynthia. You two would just go all over the world and just go nuts. But I'm so happy for you because you're doing things that we can't do as human beings. We can follow you on Facebook. We can like, and the photographs really help us. They're in a positive way that when we're down sometimes in life, we have our everyday struggles or whatever. We get to see your venture. You go all over the world, and it's fun. We live through that sometimes, and you have sometimes you don't not even aware of the impact you have on people like us. But we enjoy following your whole adventure around the world. So please keep that up. But let's do this. I'm so fascinated with your career because I was a fighter back in the day, and when I was ending my competition, it was right at the beginning of yours,
Yeah.
and you were just a major star. You were doing weapons and all the stuff that you do. You were undefeated. Now, I had never done a weapons form or a kata in my life, so I would sit on the bleachers and waiting for me to compete, and I would sit down with all the top 10 fighters in the country, and we were just amazed by you. And we would sit down and was it Karen Turner and there's a few others that were competing at that time, but you were the star. You were the one we would sit down and going, "Oh wow." But then you were part of that West Coast demonstration team with Ernie Reyes and the junior and also George Chung. We had never seen anything like that. We were from the East Coast. We thought it was like magic to us to watch what you guys could do. It was just incredible because you guys had acrobatic skills and martial arts skills we hadn't developed as of yet. And so there was no doubt that each of you were going to be big stars. How do you go from that, from competing into breaking into your first film?
Well, I had a goal that I wanted to be undefeated in forms, and I wanted to be top weapons for the 5 years too. So I would train really, really hard. And I think that's kind of why my adventure kicked in, because during that time, that's all I would do is martial arts training. I was teaching out of school. I would train all day. I would go to China to get better. At that time, no, people weren't even allowed in China. We had to have special
Oh,
permission. And it was around my fourth year that Paul Maslick, who was the editor of Inside Kung Fu, called Ernie Reyes and he said, "Hey, bring your team down to LA. There's a Hong Kong company here. They're looking for the next Bruce Lee." And Ernie said, "Well, should we bring the girls?" And he says, "Yeah, yeah, bring the girls, but they're really looking for a guy." So we went down. There was an audition at Il Cho's school. There were hundreds and hundreds of people there. And Corey Yuen actually was there for MCU for seasonal films to look for a guy. So I had to do some self defense. I did some form. I did weapons. I did some sparring. And then Corey Yuen said, "I want to go with the girl." So that's how that started. So I signed a contract to do the film. And when I was filming my first film, which funny enough wasn't with MCU and it was with Golden, it was with D&B Films that I was still competing. And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't stop competing. I won't be number
right.
one 5 years in a row undefeated." So I remember how tough it was. I would like be on set, get the crap beat out of me. And then I'd fly to Minneapolis, compete. Then I'd go back to Hong Kong. And then I'd be doing these brutal fight scenes. Then I'd fly to Atlanta. And finally, I remember because it was Karate Illustrated ratings. They said, "You're so far of everybody. Yeah, you don't have to do the last competition." So that was okay, good. I fulfilled my goal. And, at this point in my life, I just thought I was doing one movie. I really didn't think I was going to go on to be an action star. I was just thinking, wow, isn't this another unusual thing in the life of Cynthia Rothrock? She's going to be in a movie. And it's funny because I remember thinking, maybe I'll be on the poster and someday I could show my kids and say, "Hey, I was in a movie." And it wasn't until that movie came out, Yes, Madam, that was a huge success that then I got a contract with Golden Harvest to do 3 other movies. So now I'm finished competing because I just thought that was a goal, that nobody could beat. And, you're talking about, you say 5-time year undefeated, you know how it is. We've competed probably 30 times a year. So,
Right.
30 times 5, that's a lot to be undefeated. So I wanted to stop them because I thought that is a record that is going to be very hard to break. And then all of a sudden, oh, now I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do film. So everything just kind of fell in place for me, which I feel very blessed. And you know how I really feel I'm a spiritual person. I really feel that, when we find our destiny, what we're supposed to be doing here on this earth, then that's when we're happy and we're positive. And, that's what I try to, I'm very strong on Facebook is just to give people positive feelings,
Right.
you know. And like you said, everybody has ups and downs. Myself, you know, I've been through some major crises in my life, but it's like how you deal with it. And you know, I try to be a leader of positivity for people and try not to, you know, dwell so much in negativity.
Well, I think you did a smart thing. In my own career, I followed Chuck Norris, and then um, it was Bill Wallace, and then I was the next boy on the block, and I was number one for 3 years in a row, and I stopped. I was still young, and I started doing films like you. People said, "No, you still got your best years in front of you," and I went, "No, I want to go out on top. I want to be remembered in my for my legacy as a number one fighter. Not that I kept fighting past my prime, and I was number 10 or 15. You did the same thing. You went out on top, and people will always remember you were undefeated. You were the best that ever was, and that's how you remembered. So it was strategic back then, but it really paid off dividends. And then you get to go to Hong Kong, and you get to work with the royalty of stunt coordinators. I mean, I worked for Samuel Hung. You know, I did Wills on Mills with Jackie and that group, and I did the seasonal films. You know, with Keith Strandberg and Lauren, and all those films I did. But you got to work with Yonghui. You got to work with Corey Yuen. You got to work with these people. And I remember one film that I was doing my research. That is it. Was it Yun Kuei, or was it is it Corey Young the same guy, or is that two different guys? Corey Ewing and Yun Kuei, aren't they the same guy?
Corey Yuen is more English kind of name.
Exactly. Well, they're credited for kickstarting your career as well as Michelle Yeoh's career. You two together.
Mhm.
Now, what I saw from that was this. I saw that I knew how dynamic you were. You were so explosive on film, so dynamic that we've never seen that before with females. Michelle was the same way. I'm curious if Michelle realized when she was working with you, did she realize the megastar you were going to be? And if I was going to interview her, which I hope to one day, I'd ask her the same question. Did you realize that Michelle was a star to be, a bright star in the future when you were working with her?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, like I said, it was a whole new experience for me. I actually, when I went over there, I was used to seeing the Hong Kong movies with my teacher, Shum Liu, and we'd go to Chinatown after training. And I thought we'd be doing a period film. I thought I'd have long braids, you know, I'd have razor blades in my braids, you know. And when I got there, it was like, oh, you're a cop, Cindy from England. And I went, oh, okay. So it wasn't what I expected. So at that time, I think that was like her third movie. And I don't think we were thinking like being big stars. I think we were just thinking, wow, these fight scenes are incredible. This is going to be great, you know? And it wasn't even until later that I realized the impact that Corey Yuen was so innovative to say, hey, back, you know, in 1985, we shot this movie. I have two women leads, you know, at that time, people were thinking, oh no, women, you know, are fighters. They need the guy to come in to save the day. So he foresaw that this could be very powerful and different, you know, and I definitely, you know, both of us, you know, our careers flourished because of his vision of what he saw. And the two of us, we just, you know, supported each other. We'd get hurt all the time on the set, but, you know, just like she'd see me do a stunt that was really hard. So then she would go do one and then I would do one, you know. And I think there was just a lot of support there, a lot of love. And it wasn't until the movie was quite successful that we realized, wow, you know,
Wow.
it could be big for both of us.
Well, now and right now she's reaping all of her rewards. You know, she's just won the Golden Globes for her new movie that's out. I saw it. It was hard for me because I really loved her in the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons movie. I thought she should have received every award possible for that. This one's so over the top, it's just crazy for me, you know. But I think they're just now realizing her talent and they're saying, let's give her an award now. But that's the movie that I thought she should have won an award for. I think your time's coming as well. You guys got the training working with the best stunt coordinators and also the best stunt men. And was what these stunt men could do and the reactions that made you guys look phenomenal. But telling you, you did a technique coming off the wall and jump spinning kicks that I'm envious of. And in all my films, I could never get that explosive, dynamic kick speed or whatever you had. And I just went, look at that. I don't care. It's you just had the best. It transferred the film in a way that other women on film it didn't transfer, and men too, myself included. You could throw techniques, and they were so dynamic and powerful and fast that it just overwhelmed the audience. And that's why I think one of the reasons that your success, and besides your positive attitude, I love the fact you had different hairstyles in every film. It was hard to keep up with you going, what's this hairstyle or whatever. And I personally think you're more beautiful now and graceful now than you were back when you were 20s. And I think that you still have so much in front of you, and with your talent that you still have your whole life, your path in front of you to be so successful. Of all the different stunt people you worked with, the stunt coordinators, who would you say is your favorite?
I would have to say Yuen is my favorite director, favorite coordinator, just because he was very challenging for me. Like that jump off the wall that you're talking about was in Yes, Madam. I think it was in the first scene that I did. That was so hard for me again at first. So we did a bit of practicing, and you just kind of got to go for it, even though you think, oh my God, that I could get hurt.
Well, here's the thing too. Most people have no idea what it takes to do one of these films.
Oh
They
yeah,
figure that maybe
right.
you rehearse maybe a week and you've gone over the fight techniques, and then the director says action, and then no, it's made up on the spot. What do they put? 6, 8, 10 techniques together, and they expect you to be able to do it. And they just demand that you do it. And if you can't do it, they say go to the side and learn it as you're doing it. One of my films, they had the same thing. They said Tony Leung, I was doing this movie with him, and he's a very big Hong Kong. He says, I want you to kip up and do this move. And I went, kip up? What does that mean? He goes, but I had a cast in my hand, one wrist, and I had a gun in the other. I said,
Okay.
I can't kip up as it is. But he says, go to the side and learn it in 5 minutes and then come back and shoot it. So I know you had that. Plus, how long? Just give the audience some idea how long it would take to shoot one fight sequence.
Oh yeah. I mean, in Hong Kong, well, for example, Yes, Madam, the first movie I did took 7.5 months to shoot. Righting Wrongs was 5.5 months. It depends. They take after take after take. So, like, when you're shooting an American film, of course, like, you don't have that leisure to, do all that and the wire work. So maybe like in an American film, you do it 2 times and it looks good, and then you go, "Okay, good, moving on to the scene." But in Hong Kong, they do it like, Jackie Chan is known to do up to 65 takes for one scene, So you're working, like, really, really hard, and I don't know why they do so many takes, but I think it's just different camera angles, different cuts, to make sure that they have it. But, yeah, getting back to that question is, the reason I like, Corey Yuen, and I would have loved to have had him involved in this film, of course, his salary. I did contact him once to, see if he would choreograph, I think it was called Above the Law, a film that I did, and, he was like, "Cynthia, my salary is more than your budget." And he told me, he says, "Come to the set." He was shooting something with Chet Li, and he goes, "Just copy the scenes from Yes Man." And I'm like, "Oh, it's not easy. You can't copy that," because you're right, because they have the time to shoot that. They have the stuntman that will do those crazy stunts, when you're hitting it, and, it's not that easy. But that was his advice,
It,
just
No, it's not that easy. No one understands how hard it is to do a scene take after take after take. Because as a fighter, I could stall in the ring and move around and maybe sidekick and get my breath back. But when you're doing a take, you got to give 100% every time. And you're doing these times, working 12 hours a day, sometimes 6 weeks on one fight sequence. Yeah, I don't see how your body could even take that. I mean, I know you woke up every day just in pain, but that had to be just the hardest thing in the world.
Oh, yeah, I remember in Hong Kong, like, I'd wake up and go, "Oh, there's no fighting today," right? And, there was one scene actually in Yes, Madam that Michelle and I, and you probably could see it somewhere, but it wasn't in the movie, that, it was at a temple, and we were bruised so much that when we were fighting, we'd flinch, because in the beginning, I didn't know about action pictures, so I didn't have any any sleeves, so I couldn't wear pads. So you're going bone to bone. And my arms were all black, hers were all black. And Corey, you said, I had to cut that scene out because we were like, it hurts so bad, like doing the fight scene. But the funny thing is, like you mentioned, they said, hey, go work on this kip and come back. Those little parts of the film, like people don't realize how hard they are because it looks so easy on film. I remember in Righting Wrongs, I had a big, gigantic gun that I don't know where they got it. It was heavy. It wasn't a prop. And I had to turn around and fall like flat on my face, without using my hands because I had this gun. And that was such a hard thing to do, and it's hard. And there was no pads or anything to do it on. You're just going on the cement. And if you look at it, it just looks like just going through another move. But some of those, intricate moves are so complicated to do. But that's what I love. So that's what I love about like this stunt team is that, the moves are very complicated, but then when you do them, they actually look pretty easy, but that they are very hard to do.
And you doubled because you were really a stunt person as well as the actress because you were doing most of your own stunts. Whereas I was kind of fortunate sometimes because I was lacking in talent like you. There's certain things I couldn't do. Like I couldn't do, triple pirouettes when I got hit, and they'd bring in a stunt guy to do that. And I'd go, great, bring him in. Oh my gosh, because they'd always have him land like on the corner of a table. I watched how you got kicked through boxes and ropes and chains and trains and I just went, how did your body take all of that abuse? Because they never ever seemed to ever double you.
I did have doubles like for some things. It was a guy that would come in and double, but I would say, 90% of everything I've done was me doing it. And, I used to think after a while, and I started getting so beat up and bruised and then they'd go, okay, for your next movie, they would want to top the stunts that they did in the previous one. And I would think, I'm going to get killed on this next one, right? Because I actually don't like heights, even though like I skydive and, I go off cliffs on rafts and stuff like that. I really have like a nervous problem with heights. And, they would have me jumping off buildings. And, as a martial artist, we don't train that. To do that. And I would just go and since I was so naive, I just wanted to do whatever they told me. So if they're like, hey, you're going to jump off this 2-story building with a fire behind you and you have a fake baby in your hand and you have heels on and you're going to jump into boxes and mattresses. And I'm like, okay, doing it. But I just, I think I always said like, people like us that do Hong Kong movies have a little bit of craziness going on because they're very dangerous and very hardworking, But the flip side of that is when the movie is done and you look at it and you go, oh my God, that's great.
My goodness, I know it.
When's the next film? When's the next film? So I'd go, oh my God, I'm going to get killed in the next one too. When is it? When is the next one?
I was watching one of the Scott Adkins interviews podcasts, and he was talking about for some of his films they last 3 to 4 weeks, and I was thinking, our fight scenes lasted longer than that. Just the in fight scenes. What do you mean your whole movie took 3 weeks? We'd love that. I mean, we'd be doing our last fight scene. Most of the time for me, it'd be at least a week, 7 days or whatever. Yours would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, but it was nice because then you had the luxury to make sure it was perfected and there was no misses, and nowadays it's, hurry up and, we don't have time. We're losing light. Just get to the next one. So you then made your transition from the Hong Kong movies to American movies. And one of the ones I liked was China O'Brien. And you worked with, who it was Richard Norton in that one? I know Keith Cook was.
Yep, Richard Norton, Keith Cook, and Robert Klaus directed it, who directed Enter the Dragon.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about Robert Klaus.
Oh, well, we all knew Enter the Dragon and like we have House coming, right? And he was like a huge director for us back then. He was like Steven Spielberg of martial art in our minds. And he had a different way of shooting. I was used to the Hong Kong way, where you do the fight scenes a lot, then they come in and cover it. Okay, now we're going to cover that foot actually hitting your face, and I hated that because you can't, this foot is going to hit you hard. You can't react to it until you get hit, right? Like, like, oh, I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And, but I loved how that looked on film. Well, Robert Klaus was like, no, I don't want to do any cuts. I just want to shoot the whole thing. And he'd go, that's how Bruce Lee shot it. And we're like, okay. But Golden Harvest also sent a stunt team from Hong Kong to do the choreography. So they would try to, there was a difference between what Robert Klaus action directing was and the
Right.
team. So I was glad because I personally don't like just shooting the whole scene, just one shot, and I like going in for close-ups and seeing people's faces and reaction and stuff like that. And actually even, like you said, some American movies that I've done, they'd go, oh yeah, no, that ending fight scene is going to be so climatic and we're going to take our time. And you get to the set and they go, oh yeah, wow, well, we have to be out of here in 20 minutes. So we have 20 minutes to shoot this ending, and you're like, oh my God. So I'm totally going to make sure that doesn't happen in Black Creek, that there is time for those fight scenes, because that's
Yep.
what I've always dreaded is, to me, if you're doing an action picture, the action is so important. And it seems like when you run out of time, that's the first scene to get cut or,
Right.
fast. And that's what the action fans want to see. They want to see good action, not something like, okay, hurry up, let's get it done. All right, done. Let's move on. But wait a minute, this was a miss. That doesn't matter. They won't notice.
And so you'll know too, I had a hard time making the transition from fighter to screen. And the reason so is we're taught as fighters not to project and show emotions. And in the film world, it's the exact opposite. It's that fighter it's the person you're fighting that's telling the story with their face. So you need those close ups, you need those inserts, because when they get hit, you want to see that expression. You want to see how they react to it. Maybe it's a glancing blow, there's not much reaction, but for a fantastic, powerful blow, you want to see that person really react. And I had a pretty good experience. My first one was working with Robert Klaus myself, but in a very minor way. I was on the first movie with Richard Norton, and Robert Klaus was the director. I was brand new. I knew nothing about the world of filmmaking. And I remember being on the set, and I remember Robert Klaus yelling at some of the actors. And I went, oh no, I'm not prepared for this. I'm kind of glad I have a smaller role in this one as a fighter, but I watched how he treated fighters and stuff. But then he'd have other people come in and they would do more of this fight sequences. Pat Johnson, for example, was on that one. Uh, but I just remember my first one, I was like going, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared for this. Because Robert Klaus, he was like you said, he was the big director at the time. He just did Enter the Dragon. Thank God, my first person I did a fight sequence was with Richard Norton, who calmed me down and said, don't worry about it. He gave me a lot of advice. We had our first fight sequence together. And then later I did the Jackie Chan film. And it's pretty nice tie into your story here is after filming that movie, I hadn't even seen it, and Keith Cook comes to me. Used to be Keith Hirabashi. If my name is Hirabashi, I'd still go by Hirabashi. I love that name, but it's Keith Cook, and he's such a talented person. And he came to me and says, Keith, I just saw your film that you did with Jackie Chan, and I liked your performance. And I went, oh, he gave me confidence. That was kind of nice. So two guys in China O'Brien I had worked with and shared time with, and it was kind of nice seeing you in the film with them. And I thought that was a really nice film. That did well in America too, didn't it?
Yeah, it actually was really popular worldwide. And it's funny because that was like, a very well, it was the second American movie I did. No Retreat, No Surrender was the first. But when we did that, it was interesting because China O'Brien 1 and China O'Brien 2 were shot at the same time. And they were supposed to go back to back. Here's the first one, here's the second one. And I just remember like Robert Klaus would go, oh, wait, we're here in the office. Let's do the scene from China O'Brien 2 in there. And like Richard and I'd be like, what? What? We didn't even look at the script yet on China O'Brien 2. We're only doing one because that doesn't matter. Just, and then we're like, oh, what's the lines? And I remember like some of his direction was funny. Richard Norton, this is a true story. Richard Norton and I were in this scene and we're in the sun. So we can't even see. We're squinting our eyes. We didn't know we were supposed to shoot it. Robert Klaus would say it like this because we didn't have the lines, right? So Richard and I are squinting, looking horrible into the camera, saying the lines. And we go to the premiere of China O'Brien and we're sitting together and we're going, oh my God, that scene's coming up. That scene's coming up. And we were dreading it. And then all of a sudden, that scene started burning and going like this. And we're looking at each other and it comes back and the scene was gone. It passed it. I don't know what happened in the screening. You want to talk about like some kind of intervention, right? There was a burn in the film and it burned that scene and it came back. And we were just looking at each other dying laughing because that we knew that wasn't like a horrible scene. And it was like bad acting direction and squinting into the sun, couldn't open up our eyes. Oh my God. But that's kind of like how it was, like say it this way, and same thing with Homecoming, like Matthias Hughes, he was doing his first movie and we were like, don't do this. Go, who? Me? We're like, don't point at your nose. They're going to tell you to don't do it. All of a sudden, we're watching the scene, and we see Matthias goes, "Who? Me?"
Well, Richard was so good, kind of taking me under his arms. In that first, it was Force 5, and Joe Lewis was in it, Benny Urquidez, and all these different people. And I was so nervous for dialogue, and I mean, I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the acting classes. And Richard says, "Here's all you have to think about." And I just remember he took me like a white belt. He says, "Keith, when you're teaching class, imagine they're all students, and talk to them like you're talking to students. You don't get nervous speaking to your students. Just in your mind, visualize that these are students of yours." And I'm not sure it worked, but I was so grateful to have that. And that's what I would try to do anyway, visualize that. But it was so nice having him. And the fact that you were in a film with both Keith Cook and Richard, and again, every time you're on the screen with Richard Norton, there's electricity. I hope he's all throughout your movie, this new one, the Black Creek movie, because I think he's phenomenal. And I think one of the keys to these movies, I think maybe Robert Klaus had something good. I like sequels. And Hollywood, who cares? Bite me. They always, I don't care for sequels. I like sequels. I like this movie of yours to be so successful, so wonderful, because your cast is as strong as you'll ever get. They go right in and go into a second production and do another one. Now, I'm gonna throw a name out. I don't know her. I think she's really cool. She has very little acting experience, Gina Carano, but I think she's a good martial artist as well. But she does the MMA stuff. But she'd be a nice, I think, mix for you. I love to see the first film end, and then she comes out, and then coming the next one to be you two on the screen together. That'd be kind of cool. It's the power of women right now. You guys are doing well, and you are going to be such an inspiration for so many women worldwide. What you're doing with this film, and I love the fact that you're taking control of your whole career. Whatever the editor puts on the screen, you're going to have a control over that as well, which I just really love. So as far as your fight sequences, who do you think was your toughest one to be in a fight with? Because you have people like I saw you talked about Yong Bao. I was in a film on Yong Bao myself. I love the guy. He fit me better than Jackie Chan did when I fought Jackie or Sammo Hung. My favorite person to work with was with Yong Bao. Who was one of your favorites or favorites?
Actually, you know what? I always say of all the people I ever fought with, Yuen Bu was good for me because our timing was the same, the fluidity, everything just went smoothly. One of the toughest fight scenes I think I had, who is a phenomenal martial artist, it's just that our styles were different, was Wang Zhongli. In No Retreat, No Surrender. He was really strong and tough, and I kind of like to move faster and more fluid, and he liked to move slower and tougher, and so you have to adjust to the other person's way of fighting. And Yuen Bu and I just didn't have to do any adjustments because that usually, people have their own styles and they fight different, and you just got to work with them. Same thing like, with Bolo. I fought with Bolo, it's that fighting like not fast and relaxed, but just, tough all the time. And
Right.
that's a little bit different than my style. And you just have to work together. Like I got to come bring it down. He's got to bring it up, something like that. But yeah, that's why and I love fighting with Richard Norton too. I always said Richard Norton and I fought, we knew it was going to be a good fight because we were hitting each other pretty tough and strong. And, so many times it'd be like, oh, you got me back from that last film, hitting me a little hard. But I know, I always knew. And I think that's why people put us together in movies together, because they knew that it, our fighting together worked.
It's a great contrast because he's so good looking and has a powerful build. He's like Tarzan, and he's so talented, but he comes off so powerful. And it's kind of a good contrast to your speed and your movement. Whereas with young, I always say Bial because I don't know how to pronounce his name. You say it the right way. It's like when I did my scene with him, it was the ending fight scene with Wheels on Mills. We shot it in Barcelona. Now it's surreal. I'm fighting him, but in my subconscious, I'm going, look at this guy. He's like an acrobat. I was so mesmerized, fascinated by how talented this guy was. I'm thinking that, and I should be in my role, but I'm going, look what he's doing. He's flipping and jumping and spinning. I'm going, how in the world is this guy doing that? So I enjoyed the scenes when I saw you with him as well. It's like, it's aesthetically beautiful. There's a beat and a rhythm, and it's just beautiful to watch. You don't even need sound. You can just sit back and just enjoy the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was phenomenal, too. I just remember like one scene, he did a flip onto a rocking chair, and he shot it about, oh, he did it many times because he had to land on the handles from a flip, without falling off it. And I was like, wow, that impressed me so much that he did that. And, um, he pretty much did most of his own stunts too. So that impressed me as well.
Well, he kind of reminded me of you a lot because he was dynamic, acrobatic, and his moves were just fantastic. Whereas Sammo Hung was all power, and Jackie Chan was just all over the workplace. All of his moves and jumps and spins. It was harder to fight him. But with Young Bao, it was almost like a dance routine. I mean, it was just I really enjoyed that. So maybe in the future you'll get to work with him again. That'd be a nice team up as well.
Yeah, I would love to. I heard he's doing films again, and he's, I think, Canada, but I would love to get in touch with him. I think that would be awesome. Like you said, to do a sequel. I think, what, 30 years later, here they
Right.
are.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, it,
I think that's phenomenal, Keith, is like you and me and all the other action stars that are out there that, even though it's been like 30 years or so since we've done those movies, we still stay in shape, we still work out. Like you said, I feel stronger now. I feel I've learned more, and I think it's a good inspiration for people too to see, like I think I said something, you know, I'm getting a lot of buzz for Black Creek, and someone said something like, "Oh, you're bringing the old timers back," or something like that. And I was like, "No, oh my God, have you looked at them? They are like so fit and so
I
strong, better
I
than back in the day." It's like, yeah, there's nothing old there. I
You
mean,
could offer Don Wilson money to fight a full contact match, and he would do it tomorrow. I mean,
he wa-
he's that good in shape, wasn't he? And of course, Richard, he's in all these movies, and he keeps his shape, and he's phenomenal. Oliver Gruner too. He looks just as
it's
good as he's been in any of his films. Billy Blank's good bad guy. He's got the look and big physique of a bad guy. He'd probably be the. I don't even care who he plays in the film, but
you know, it,
here's a hard question for you.
I'll give you
It's
a little
like,
clue.
go ahead.
Billy is not a bad guy.
Shoot. I would have made him a bad guy. I don't know. He looks because I saw King of the Kickboxers fighting Lauren Avedon, and that was wow, what a fantastic scene at the ending of that movie. They can both do anything. They both had the beautiful kicks
Yep.
and again, it's an aesthetic beauty of their legs movement. That's what you have. And I'm telling you, we've done films where it was hard to cast females. And we always said, wish we had a Cynthia Rothrock type. That's what we said, Keith Strandberg and I, because we would produce films together. And we'd find somebody and we end up having to double them because they couldn't get that power or that speed.
More
And it's nothing bad. It's just reality. Even myself, sometimes I look at myself and I go, God, I just wish I had more explosive on some of my techniques. And I watch yours and I go, that's what I need. That's what I'm looking for. It's just, it translates to films just beautifully. So one of my questions is, and again, I have the basic questions like people watching movies and following your background. It's like picking your favorite child. It's so hard to do. You can't pick a favorite child, but it, if you had to pick favorite movie, one or two movies, which would be your favorites?
Of my own or other
Your
films?
own,
My own?
your own.
Well, oh yeah. Okay. Well, I would have to say, as far as the Chinese movies go, it would have to be Righting Wrongs or Lady Reporter, those two. And the reason for that is because their fight scenes are phenomenal. Even when I look at them now, I go, "Wow, that's like awesome," And oh wait, that's me doing that. And the
Yeah.
one good thing is all those movies are being remastered now, so now they're going to be available through companies like Vinegar Syndrome, Eureka 88 Films. They are bringing all those Chinese films back. Yours too will be coming back too. So the whole new generation could see
Right.
these films. So that's like really, really, I think awesome because there's nothing like those films. Doing those Hong Kong movies. They still 30 years, they still hold up today, and it's because
They
the
do.
fight scenes are so good.
And there's no special effects, GI or green screen. No, you did those stunts.
Yeah.
They wire you sometimes, but you were doing it. It's the real McCoy, and that's what it was. That time of history of those martial arts films, and it was so unique. Now there's martial arts in all films that are action films. So there's not really many per se just, martial arts films. There's action films that have martial arts in them. But during our era, they were pure martial arts films because that's the only place you could go to see these kind of films. So I that was just an era. I'm so blessed, and I know you are that we were part of that generation like that.
Well,
And as far as non-Hong Kong films, which would be your favorite?
non-Hong Kong, I would have to say Sworn to Justice or the Martial Art Kid that I did. I like Sworn to Justice because I had the opportunity to work with Brad Dourif, and he's like one of my favorite actors. I loved working with him. I felt that the script was a little more challenging for me than past ones. I did bring in a Hong Kong choreographer for that. Only one guy, so he just did some of the work, but we kind of added a little of that fighting to it. And I like the martial art kid because it had a good moral about, we don't tolerate bullies. So I stay out of the American pictures, those. But the interesting thing is, Keith, is like action pictures are not like my favorite go-to, which you would think it would. And the reason is because, like you said, if I see action that isn't good, like, oh, that wasn't like strong or that foot was in the wrong position. I can't watch it. I can't watch bad action. And when I do see a movie that's like really good or a fight scene that's really good, like say, for example, in Sherlock Holmes, I saw Robert Downey Jr. doing the Wing Chun. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so impressed. He's an actor and he did that Wing Chun so good. That was such a fabulous scene. And then someone said later, yeah, he is. He does study Wing Chun. And I went, oh, okay. That's why.
Oh,
But
that's good.
I think, in this film that I'm doing, Black Creek, I know everybody could fight. And that was very, that my strong characters are gonna bring it to the table with fighting. Some
Well,
ex- like
and again, you've got the martial arts version of the Expendables. I mean, you truly do. I'm not over exaggerating at all. You've got some of the top martial arts stars ever that do films and martial artists at the same time in your film. I think you're the greatest bankable star there is in America for these kind of films. So I am predicting total success. I think you're going to exceed your expectations because we can get millions and millions of people around the world. And by then, a year from now, it's so fluid the way we do distribution with the internet and the theaters. It changes,
yeah.
month by month almost. But I think it's going to have maybe it'll be easier access to see your films. But I predict millions will see this film because you have so many fans of so many people in your film that are going to flock to go see it. And then number one is a Western, which was a whole different genre. And then you've got action, which is another. You've got the home run in my book, and so I'm going to be there 100% to help you promote it. And again, these podcasts stay online forever on the internet, and so hopefully people will be watching these podcasts in the future and go, "Hey, I'm going to look this film up," and hopefully they buy it and stream it and get it. But I just want to thank you so much for being on my show today because I've been fascinated by you and your whole career. You're an inspiration to so many people, male and female, but just think of the generation of female martial artists that you're inspiring by what you're doing. So thank you so much for being on the show. And again, if you like this episode, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.
Okay.